بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a warm and sunny Tuesday in the great state of New Jersey, where we're going to dive into the great landscape of Mauritania. We're going to go to Zaytuna College way back in 1993, 4, 5, whenever it was open, to one of the OGs, one of the originals, Shaykh Murabit Benavidez from the Bay Area, one of the earliest beneficiaries of the work that institution had done. And unfortunately, this stream has now interrupted this amazing Zinger burger that the guys got me. This is beyond regular old Zinger burger. This is some special stuff. Cheska level stuff. It is Cheska, and Cheska is a word, right? That says, it's in Desi, it means amazing. In Urdu, I mean.
I don't even know how to translate it. It just means like when you like really like something, you just keep.
It's like a exclamation.
You have like that feeling of like after you.
Yeah. I also heard it's a bad word too. It's true. Has multiple meanings. Let's read our section on Hadith terminology. All right. Let's read this really quickly before we bring our guest, Shaykh Murabits, Benavidez. And we were talking about the Bukhari and Muslim, and these very, very stringent scholars who ensured that what they narrated was sound. When they speak with the sigha, or the expression of an'ana or an'ana, which means, what does that mean? You may not have no clue what it means. It means that if I said the word, I was told by Shaykh so-and-so, what image does it give you? It gives you a clear image that the Shaykh was right in front of me or in a class and he told me that, right? But if I say Shaykh so-and-so said, it doesn't indicate that, right? And so with Bukhari, an Imam like al-Bukhari, when he narrates from his own teacher without the expression of my teacher told me or I heard from my Shaykh, Hisham ibn Ammar, for example, and he says qala, he says he said, but because we know his methodology, we deem it that he heard it from him. You see that? So if I said Obama said, President Obama said blah blah blah, I could have just read that, right? But if I say President Obama told me something, then clearly I met him or we talked on the phone or something like that. You see, that's the difference. And so when it's not a scholar of hadith who is so meticulous, then we don't accept that from him. We consider that to be a broken chain. He's just telling you what somebody said. He's not telling you that he met with that sheikh. So that's where we had left off. Okay. What happens if a very meticulous scholar of hadith like Bukhari or Muslim narrates with sighat at-tamrid? Sighat at-tamrid means that someone says, it has been said. When someone says, some say, or it has been said, or it was narrated, or it has been claimed, something like that. When someone says that, they're admitting that they don't have a sound chain for it, that they really don't know the origin of it. But if that person is meticulous, like Bukhari or Muslim, then we deem that to be Hasan. We don't deem it to be weak. Okay. And also, when Bukhari and Muslim mainly Bukhari, may name a chapter on a hadith by saying the chapter heading is the saying of the Prophet that, and he doesn't give a chain. It's because that hadith, it doesn't meet his qualifications. It does not meet his qualifications. Yet he deems it that it has a basis. So he gives it that chapter heading, and he says in it, the saying of the prophet such and such. Okay. And there are good examples of that. Okay. What's wrong with the internet here? We having issues, Ahmad, or no? You have. I'm having issues.
I think I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah.
All right, Shaykh Murabits is here. We are ready to take a deep dive into some really, really good times, in my opinion. And we're gonna go, and this is gonna be your little history lesson. Islam in America has a great point in history that I was able to, I would say, be at the edges of, and sometimes see it directly. And so, let's introduce our guest for today, Shaykh Murabit Benavidez. فليتفضل بسم الله. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Safina Saadi live stream.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How's that?
Wonderful to be on the show. Kind of bring our conversations and share it with the world. Inshallah, we've been having some wonderful kind of memories that we've shared. At least not necessarily together, but like separately. And I'm looking forward to the show.
When I was young, just to give everyone a context, I was in college and discovered a box of tapes that a brother had given me. And he said, you got to listen to these tapes. I started listening to the tapes, and I had asked him for some material to listen to. And some were VHS tapes, some were cassette tapes. And I became, I would say, within a month, an addict, hooked on those old Hamza Yusuf lectures. And there were probably 20 in total between cassettes and VHS, just to listen on loop. And you, however, were there and lived in the Bay Area. Tell us first about yourself and your background in California. Where exactly did you live and grow up?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Bay Area. So just to kind of give folks that aren't from, I guess, outside the San Francisco Bay Area, we have like a bay that's in the middle, and then we have different sections of that area. So we have like the peninsula, which is San Francisco. Typically, when people think of the Bay Area, they think of San Francisco. And then you have the East Bay, which is like Oakland. And then you have the South Bay, which is Silicon Valley. So at the time, mainly Silicon Valley was in the South Bay. And now it's like the whole Bay Area is basically Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So my family is originally from there. I'm like Mexican. My father, his parents moved from New Mexico. They were Spanish and Native American, and moved to the Bay Area. So around the 40s or 50s, there's a huge influx of folks from the South and from the Southwest that moved to work in the factories. So my family is from that group. And yeah, so that's my background. So I lived in the East Bay. So that's my East
Zoom
Bay.
Out a little bit, Omar. All right, Omar is putting the map up. So all right, zoom in a little bit and X that second window out. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's zoom in. All right, so that's a pretty big bay. So there's the Gulf. What is they call that, Gulf? All right, don't move around too much because it'll zoom in one more click.
It's the San Francisco Bay. So
okay, so there's the Gulf of something. I can't really read that, but the Gulf of something that leads. There's a little inlet, and then there's a huge bay. Actually, I didn't realize it was that big. Okay.
Yeah. So and inside the bay, there are these ports. So Oakland had a port, San Jose had a port, and then San Francisco. Okay. So that's kind of the way the area kind of grew, was from these areas.
And you were on the inside.
Before that, we're all on the inside. Yeah. So before it was all like suburbia. It was all like orchards and farms and what have you. So prior to the kind of boom of Silicon Valley, it was there's a lot of factories there, and it was very working class. So the city which I'm from, Fremont, was one of the centers for the during the war in Afghanistan. A lot of refugees from Afghanistan settled in Fremont. So it's one of the main kind of destination points for refugees. So
Okay, which war? The 80s war?
the 80s war. Yeah.
Oh, so when the U.S. was supporting the Afghan rebels,
Hmm.
freedom
Yeah. So
fighters.
yeah, the freedom fighters, the Mujahideen,
Hmm.
and that's when Mujahideen had a good connotation.
Yeah.
So the area was mainly there was some folks from the subcontinent and some Arabs, but it was mainly Afghans.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where we were at. So I don't know if you want to go start and discuss the Zaytuna and the roots of how things were there
Yeah.
now,
So
but
yeah. So then, how did you cross paths? First, you cross paths with Muslims and Islam, and then Zaytuna. Tell us about that route.
so my stepbrother Abdurrahman, he's 6 years older than me, and
Mm.
he would take me out. He's kind of, you have an older brother, 6 years. He's kind of the cool one. You look up to him. So he would take me with him and his friends, and we'd go about and hang out and what have you. Well, when he went to community college, he met up with some Muslims, and he got very active in the kind of the Latino community and doing kind of work in the Latino community. And then he became Muslim. So when he became Muslim, he started taking me around to the different masajid and these things and gatherings. And this was before Sheikh Hamza. Like he was in the South Bay mainly,
Mm.
and so we would go to the East Bay. There was a masjid over there that we would attend, and that was a bit more. You could say like more on the kind of the the Malcolm X type of kind of black nationalist type tip. And we would go to that place, and then around this time, I was in high school. So kids that are in high school, they want to hang out with the cool kids and do what the
Mm.
cool kids do. So my interest in Islam waned during that period, and then once I graduated high school, that's when I started. People start thinking of, what am I going to do with my life? Typically that's when you know you become Muslim, or you really start, thinking deeply, introspectively of like what you're going to do with your life. So that's what I did. I started, reading as much as I could. Instead of going to college, I decided just to take a year off. So my parents thought I was going to college, but what I was actually doing was just going to the library.
Mm.
I would just read
Ajib.
and read, and this I read, history of religions, all as many books as I could find on religion and history, and really wanted to find the truth. Like what is, there must be a way out there to live. You know, when I was a kid, there was a show. This is kind of like the Discovery for boomers.
Mm.
The Discovery Channel for boomers. Like we was like PBS. There was a show called Nova.
Hmm.
You were go over different animals, and kind of you would study the animals and what have you. And one of the things, what I noticed was that there some animals, they innately knew how to be whatever they were.
Mm.
They knew exactly what it meant to be a snake. As soon as they're born, it was imprinted in their mind of how to be a snake. Others needed a bit more rearing. Um, but my question was like, well, how do, then if we are born and we don't know anything and we need to be taught everything, then the creator of that snake, the creator of those birds, all of the animals must have given us a way. So the prophets must be sent.
Hmm.
That the most sense to me. Uh, so
That's
I was
like an interesting observation that most animals are ready to go and be adults within 3 years,
yeah,
but humans may take 17 years.
yeah. It takes a long time to be a human.
Yeah.
So I was looking for that
Yeah.
guide because the Bible, I couldn't find it there. When I was a kid, around 9, we read the Bible, and um, with my mom. We were like, you know, we really want to get into this religion, so we were reading the Bible together.
Mm.
And then I got to the story of Nuh alayhi salam, and it's this the way they depict Nuh alayhi salam in the Bible is just horrendous. It's
Mm.
quite shocking, and I felt ashamed to read it in front of my mother
Wow.
as a 9-year-old, and I'm like, no, this. So I believe in Jesus and I believe in a prophet, but this book is flawed. I need to
Mm.
find the true book. So around that time, Abdurrahman, my brother, I imagine he saw in me like the opportunity to give dawah. Um, so he started taking me around to Sheikh Hamza's classes. So
Mm.
he did that initially when I was in high school, but I was still a knucklehead. So, but that's when he formally said, "Oh, we have this class. Do you want to attend the class?" And yeah, so we started uh, going to his classes. So at the time, like as you know, you probably know better than I do that there wasn't really much in as far as traditional studies goes.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of studying a traditional text like a metin, it's called a metin, um, with a teacher that has unbroken chains of transmission back to the author
Mm-hmm.
was unheard of. You just had these topical type of books that you would read, and if you're a new convert, what you would be given is a set of pamphlets. So
Mm-hmm.
when I became Muslim, that's what I had, like a set of pamphlets. And it's like, what is Islam? And you just open it up and it has a little bit and then of information. And that's what I was supposed to go study
Yeah.
with these pamphlets.
Yeah.
And if to go pray, you know, you'd be given like a poster. So I had this poster that was given to me,
Yeah.
and it was like half in Arabic, and even the sequencing of like the movements, I couldn't. I felt like I was given like the Rosetta Stone of the prayer. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to this. I don't have like the key to
Yeah.
unlock. So it was tough times back then, you know, to go and study. And what Sheikh Hamza brought that really is kind of for those who didn't live through that time was revolutionary, like of studying a text. And once you finish the text, you feel like you've actually like learned something,
Yeah.
that you're standing on firm foundations.
Mm. Mm.
You know, it's not just like information. No, you are now part of a tradition,
Mm-hmm.
and it was quite impactful. One of the scholars that um, Sheikh Hamza brought during this time in the mid to late '90s was named Shaykh Khatri. He was the brother-in-law of Murabit al-Hajj,
Let's get a picture, Omar. Mm.
and there's a video that was floating around. You could probably find on YouTube of him making wudu,
Oh, yeah.
and so this it may sound silly to some, but his wudu, just the through the recording of the wudu and people witnessing him making wudu in the way that was transmitted, uh, you know, through chains of transmission back to the
Mm-hmm.
Prophet, you know, to Sayyidina Jibril, um, that people would weep, literally cry,
Subhanallah.
just witnessing his wudu. You know, just you know, actually seeing like someone perform wudu in the correct manner that was passed down through the chains of narration. That's how the prayer and the wudu. You when you look at those hadith that pertain to the prayer or wudu, uh, it's typically like, you know, pray as you see me pray,
Yep.
or they say, okay, this is how the Prophet made wudu, and there isn't much information in those hadith of like exactly like when we go through a fiqh book of, okay, this is the fard, this is sunnah. Rather, it was you had to witness the person actually perform it.
Yep. Yep.
You know?
And tell us about your first meeting with Shaykh Khatri, you're an American. He's a Mauritanian. He's also probably was in his 60s at that time. And you're maybe still a late teenager. So how drastic was it, and how like what was that experience like? Because I mean, I could tell you when I met my first Mauritanian, they're very distinct from everybody else. Like they're living in another century, right? And tell me about your reaction with that.
So, so I started attending the classes with Sheikh Hamza formally in '98. So it was the fall of I guess you went to the Fez intensive,
Mm-hmm.
and so that fall I started going to the Sheikh Hamza's classes,
Mm-hmm.
and this is pre Zaytuna. So there's a school called Islamic Study School that that was formed by two Afghan brothers as well as my brother.
Subhanallah.
And they were running it, and it was this before Sheikh Hamza. It was this like they had a Quran teacher, Qadi Saab. Funny thing is, they used to call him Qadi Saab, and I didn't know as a like I thought that was his name.
Subhanallah.
I'm like, oh yeah, Qadi, Qadi. Like, who are you
Subhanallah.
talking about? Which Qadi? So they started this school in Hayward, California, which was in like a very humble beginnings. It was not in a very good neighborhood, and the building itself was should have been condemned. And after we
Wow.
left that area, they demolished the
Subhanallah.
whole strip mall. This is like this little small strip mall. And when you'd go make wudu, you would have to hold the sink
Wow.
and put your foot in and make
Subhanallah.
wudu. It was it was quite a scene. But the classes were packed.
Subhanallah.
They were packed. There was I was there for the first class. I wasn't Muslim at the time. I was 16, and I was there for that class, and it was packed.
Subhanallah.
Over 200 people in the class,
Wow.
and I would say like 2 years later, I started going to the classes in '98, and it was still packed.
Subhanallah.
And the diversity of the classroom was something to behold, because you'd have the Afghan brothers and sisters from that refugees that were there. You had since we're in the East Bay, you had the brothers from Oakland, black brothers who were converts. They were from the inner city, you know, and some of them you know uh, were in prison, found Islam in prison, and then you had all of like the Arabs and the Indo-Pacs from the South Bay engineers.
Mm.
They're all sitting on the ground studying Islam together with Sheikh Hamza,
Subhanallah.
and it was really impactful. This being there, and I remember one time one of the famous story of after Fath Mecca, where the Prophet where the Ansar came to the Prophet and were really concerned because they weren't receiving all of the like they were with Prophet in his most difficult times, and all of these leaders, rich, wealthy individuals, are receiving all of the spoils of victory,
Yep.
and everyone from the engineers to the students to the very tough brothers and from Oakland were all bawling, just crying.
Mm.
And
When you were yeah
when we
when
were
you were
in this,
leaving.
well, yeah, when we were when I just became Muslim, and I was the only one that wasn't crying. I just
Subhanallah.
what's going on?
Yeah.
This is amazing. So it was a very transformative experience. This being there, there was a lot of barakah during those classes.
Subhanallah.
I remember this like prior to becoming Muslim. Um, I would vividly get like the night after the class, I would go to sleep, and then someone or something would like kick me
Mm.
and wake me up at night,
Subhanallah.
and
Subhanallah.
I would like play through like word for word every single thing that was in the class,
Subhanallah.
and so like just being like there at that like the good old days of being around Sheikh Hamza, and he was really just kind of focused on just studying the teaching the text,
Yeah.
was
Mm.
amazing. And so when the Mauritanians came, it was like the next level. Like it was, you're there, and like you said, it's as if you are witnessing someone that 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 existed as a Muslim, as a scholar before colonization.
Subhanallah. Yes, that's what it is. There's no.
Yeah,
That's really the point. They're free of the after effects of colonization. That's the
yeah.
thing that gets you.
Because they're living in an environment that's very difficult to live. And
Yeah.
you imagine these pasty white Frenchmen coming into Mauritania and trying to like live in the desert. It's
I
they
mean,
have tough.
there wouldn't even be any resources to take home. Like there would be no reason to colonize them.
Right. I
You
mean,
know?
the only thing that they have is iron ore, but it's in this very desolate, kind of almost looks like Mars area. It's like
Yeah.
it's not a something which yeah, apparently there isn't like
There's nothing to have, right?
there's nothing to have that. It's very difficult even to stationing themselves there. And in fact, when I was studying in Mauritania, there was a coup d'état, an attempted coup d'état, and then a successful coup d'état that happened,
Mm.
and we were in the middle of as if nothing was happening.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
There was war happening in the city,
Yeah.
Nouakchott, the capital, and we were in the middle of the desert, as if nothing was happening.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
So when they came in, there was this dignity that they have, this uprightness,
Yeah.
not an arrogance, but just like being a rajul, like a
Yeah.
man, just standing,
Subhanallah.
and it was very distinct, and you could see like um, they looked different than everyone
Hmm.
else
Yeah.
when they would come in,
Even the way
and
they walk with their back straight, and
the back, right, exactly,
yeah, and
yeah,
their chest out. It's like the hallmark of a people who've never been conquered, right? They're
mhm,
very there's nothing, in their history that's making them feel down or feel bad about anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, it was impactful. So
Yeah.
just by seeing him, I'm like, that's it, I'm
It's
out.
amazing that in 1997, before I had started listening to those tapes, knew anything about that same year, there was a boy in the community whose dad had dropped him off and left. He just dropped him off to work and maybe, I guess, send money to the family or to get a better life or something. Well, this young boy's name is Al-Wali,
Mm,
and he used to come and do jobs for my mom, like
mm,
do different odd jobs around the house. And she was almost like a charity case for her. She'd just give him a job, give him a meal. He was like 17 years old. But his ways of doing everything were so simple that it to me was fascinating. When she would give him his food, he would just take his food, crouch down, and eat it with his hands. And I'd
mm.
never seen anyone do this before, right?
Well,
Anytime that he wanted to take a rest from the work that he was doing, he'd find shade in the tree, under a tree in the backyard, or in the front yard, and he'd just rest under it. And nobody in America does that. Nobody rests, like under a tree in the suburbs, right?
right.
And when I one time drove him back home to see where he lived, he literally just lived in a square, in a rectangle basement with nothing but a cot, and an alarm clock, I think he had, and that was pretty much it. And never seen anyone live in such sparse life. So it's almost like, you know, when food you mix sweet and spicy or sweet and sour. So there was a lot of pride to these Mauritanians, but also a lot of simplicity. And it was a mix of two things, like we're the polar opposite. Egyptians, Pakistanis, we have a lot of stuff, but we also have, there's a lot of baggage when the colonizers have been in your history for the last 300 years. You're sort of mixed. Even when your elites are mixed. It's not a Syrian culture, it's Syrian/French culture. Yet you hate the French, right? It's like, what is this? You hate the French, and you hate America, and you hate Israel, yet you're secularist. Like, nothing makes sense here.
Right.
There's no continuity of neither thought nor culture. They have continuity of thought and culture, right? Although it's very simple, because that simplicity is what protected them from being colonized in the first place. All right, so let's continue now. You started to study with them.
So, yeah, so as soon as this, seeing him, and I get them being Maliki also helps with them, like you were saying, the uprightness, you know, the sadl. So I went to this brother's house, Sheikh Rami Nsour, his parents' house. He was friends with my brother. They were going to college together, and so went to his house and just saw the just saw him up close and personal, Shaykh Khatri.
Subhanallah.
And after Shaykh Khatri left, and it was just Sheikh Rami just came. This is his first time back from being in Mauritania. Dude, I gotta go.
Subhanallah.
That's it. I'm out, bro. I'm out. I'm leaving. That's it. I'm going.
So it was quick.
It was like I became Muslim, and then like 2 weeks later, that's when the Mauritanians came, and I was ready to go.
Wow,
In fact,
that's youth.
Yeah.
There's no subhanallah. There's no runway here. We're just taking off.
I found what I was looking for, and I'm okay. This is it. So I'm going down this path, and subhanallah. So I wasn't planning on going for a very long time. I just wanted to go a couple of years. I was, really benefiting from the classes from with Sheikh Hamza, and I'm like, if I just do 2 years, and that I would learn. I would know so much.
Subhanallah.
So I didn't expect this would be my life's journey of
But to give some context to listeners, this is a very important piece of context. Is that back in those days, the amount of messages that you got in life, the impressions that you saw with your eyes, or heard with your ears, or read, were very few. No Twitter, no phones, no internet. So if you had a meeting with somebody, the impression could be for life. And you were impacted. Like, I know personally, if I'm in a majlis, that's a beautiful majlis, I may be impacted probably maximum a couple hours, unfortunately. Then life comes at you with bombardments, and technology brings you bombardments, and you're back down, right, where you left off. But back in those days, one meeting, a short visit can impact you for life. You carried it for a long time. So I just wanted to give that context, because that time you would meet a sheikh, and the impacts would be like really long, and you can notice the impact on somebody who met those shuyukh. And I noticed those brothers who went to Mauritania came back with a stillness and a sukoon that nobody else had. I'm telling you. There was a sukoon on those brothers, and you could tell right away, from a mile away, that this person was out in the Bay Area. All right, continue.
Yeah, so Sheikh Rami's like, well, you need to learn Arabic, and there wasn't a program out there. You're just you have to know Arabic. So
so no Arabic and you go.
So he's like, you can't go. Brothers tried, and it's tough. It's difficult as it is. You should learn Arabic. So go to a place that can teach you Arabic. He says,
okay.
I know some brothers that are in Mauritania that are going to Syria, and these were like Sheikh Yahya Rodis and Mustafa Davis and some other folks that were in that went to Mauritania. So they went to Syria. I went and tried to find programs. So I'm like, okay, خلاص, I'm going. Start saving up money, and then started looking for programs. And back then there wasn't any information. Like the internet was pretty janky. It was a lot of your information was through like an AOL, little like a chat room, or there may be a website. Um,
Mhm.
there was a program in Morocco. Was it the Qalam or Aleph? I forget the name of the program.
Elif.
Aleph, yes. And I went and found the email for the director of the program, and at the time he said, "Well, I just got a teaching position over in Georgia, so I'm leaving. So the program is temporarily closed. So if you want to come and have tea, that's it." And that was it. That was really I couldn't find any information about programs in Egypt, although I heard somewhat there were programs. Medina University was a program that was kind of mentioned, and then but Syria there was nothing. So you had to like go there
Mm.
and figure it out once you got there. It wasn't something that oh, I know everything. The itinerary is all planned out. No, you had to go there and kind of figure it out.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I was there for a couple years in Syria, and alhamdulillah, I was there, and kind of my experience there really kind of reaffirmed my desire to go to Mauritania.
Mm.
I love the shuyukh there, and I benefited a lot, but it was really hard as someone new to Islam, new to studying the Deen, to kind of disassociate between kind of folks that are trying to navigate Islam in underneath a dictator, and folks that are being influenced and kind of
Mm.
following
Mm.
the party line. So it was
Mm.
really hard for me to know who was who.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I went on and went to Mauritania after that, early 2000s, alhamdulillah,
So 2 years in Syria.
and 2 years in Syria. Yeah.
Mm. And I do remember the brothers always talking about there being spies everywhere.
Yeah, there was like uh, our apartment was one of the few apartments that had a line, and like a long distance line, like an international line that you can
Mm.
call outside of Syria. And so we would have brothers from England, brothers from the States coming over to our apartment to use the phone. So they would get like a phone card, and they would, or they would call their folks, and then they would call in. And but all of that was tracked. So when we went to go and renew our lease, the police, we went to the police station, and we had to get registered through them. They went and pulled out a laundry list of every single person that went to our apartment. And
Mm.
it's like, who is this? 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 Why are they coming to your place? No one shady, but just there were spies, and
Mm.
I couldn't point out who that person was, who that spy was. I didn't see anyone kind of looking, veering through like their window or anything like that. But apparently there was someone that was
Subhanallah. Reported you guys.
reported. In
Mm.
fact, I remember my just before I left, one of my Quran teachers was a young kid, um, and well, he was a college level. He was going to university studying Arabic. And he told me that he wasn't a spy, but he was an informant. He said that the mukhabarat came to him and said that you have to tell us what's going on in the
Mm.
masjid.
So basically, the difference being is that he's only telling him what he saw, them what he saw in public.
Right. He said, if not, we're going to throw you in prison.
Yeah.
So he says, I have to. And he says, and I feel it's my duty to protect everyone and everything that's happening in the masjid. Because it was a really beautiful, active masjid. There were
Mm.
some fawad that were that were produced from this masjid. It was very beautiful. I went to the like parents' night, and I remember one of the teachers said, "Who here as a child memorized 20 pages this week?" And then And
Wow.
then all these parents had, who's a child memorized 15 pages this week, and then all these hands came up.
Subhanallah.
So it was a beautiful environment, but it was very difficult to ascertain like who's who.
Mm.
So yeah, so I was there till around 2001, and then the following 2002 I went to Mauritania.
Okay, so this is going to be a big leap. Syria is still a city. There's toilets, there's water, there's electricity, there are phones. I think it's a good barzakh between like America and Mauritania. At that time, Syria still wasn't. Probably it's more modernized. The Arab world, at least. I know Syria's destroyed a lot of it, but you take this big leap to Mauritania. All right, walk us through exactly how you get to Mauritania and where you had to walk, where you had to take trains, trucks, camels, or what.
Yeah, so Sheikh Rami was going back and forth, and I told him like, all right, I'm going to Mauritania, and it was difficult. Like I remember him saying that he's like, man, it's really tough, bro. It's gonna be really hard for you. It's hot there. They eat all you eat every day is just beans and rice.
Subhanallah.
And I'm like, dude, I'm Mexican. That's all I eat every day is beans and rice, man. Who are you trying to scare? And prior to living in the Bay Area, I lived in the central. I grew up in the Central Valley, which is like, if you look at California, there's that middle part. If you look at like a map of California, it's surrounded by mountains, and in the middle there's this massive valley where if any of your fruits and vegetables say California, it comes from this area. And where I lived is where like the grapes were and pistachios were grown. So I lived in the Central Valley. It's very hot there. It's like a steppe climate. During the summer, it would get up to like 113, 115 degrees. Very hot. So alhamdulillah, that experience, growing up in the Central Valley really prepared me for the weather. And as far as the eating, I just went on this for several months, just eating once a day.
Wow.
Prior to going to Mauritania, I'm like, okay, if I can do this here in this environment, then I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So just before, like in Syria, I was eating like once a day, and yeah. So when I got there, it wasn't. I actually was really hard on myself, and when I got there, it wasn't as bad. For my experience, I grew up poor, and my mom was on food stamps and stuff like that. So there was times which we didn't have food in the fridge, and so I'm accustomed to that kind of living. So for me, it wasn't that bad. There are others that would come in, and it was really, really challenging. I remember this one brother came in, and so in Mauritania, you have to build these tents, right? There isn't like housing for you to go live in.
Yeah.
You have to build your own like hut. So we built me and my friend. We built a nice hut, and he ended up going to study somewhere else. So my tent, my hut was had room for brothers. So typically I would take in brothers that would come in, and yeah, so there would be brothers that would come in, and it was so difficult for them that they would leave the very next day.
Wow.
Like the that brought them in, would take them out. There was this one brother, he came in, and I was like, okay, yeah, you can stay here. You can stay with me. So he started asking questions. So, okay, well, who's going to wash my clothes? Who's going to cook my food? And I said, you're going to do that. I said, one day I'm going to do it. I'm going to cook. The next day, you're going to cook. I'll teach you how to cook a meal, but you're going to do it. He said, your clothes, you're going to go to the well that's like almost a mile away, and you're going to go and once a week wash your clothes. And he's like, man, I didn't know it was like that. And the next day he left all of his supplies that he brought, a whole big truck full of supplies, left it in my tent, and then he jumped on the truck and went back.
Wow, subhanallah.
because it was too difficult.
And these are Americans that are just like running for the hills.
Right.
Wow.
You know, because there wasn't any. You can't really, even if there were pictures of Mauritania, you don't realize what it is. You have this, fantasy of the desert and
Yeah.
the mirages and these types of things, and you don't really know exactly what experientially it's like.
Omar's got putting up these pictures of Mauritania right now of makeshift tents that what are these, like any old cloth that they find?
So I don't see the pictures, but yeah. So what we did is you have to bring in material, and you would go and you'd make your tent, and then there would be rips and what have you in it, and so you would have to go and go to different tents, and you would ask for material from like
wow,
the other students. So you would, if you have an old, the dara, which is the Mauritanian garb, it's a lot of fabric, right?
Yeah.
So they would, ask folks for
used
ones, and then they'll go and they would make their tent out of it. I remember when I was there, they reconstructed renovated the roof of the masjid. And so they went around asking for materials. So there would be like those old blankets, like, with the tiger or the lion on it that folks would have. Those were donated. So like inside the masjid, you would have like whatever material was available, and you would look up and you would see like one of these tiger blankets up top, because that's all they had. There wasn't like,
yeah.
It was you were like a day's, like, to get to Nouakchott, which is like the largest city. You would have to, it would take you like 16 hours to get there.
How? By truck?
So you have these trucks. They have these what are called Toyota Helixes that you would have to rent in Nouakchott, and they would take you up to Murabit Hazir's village. And at the time, there was only one highway through all of Mauritania. They had one road, and alhamdulillah, it went through, or at least it passed by where Murabit Hajj is, which is in a region called Taganet. So it bordered to Taganet, and what you'd have to do is you'd have to go off-road, and then you would have to either take the Helix truck and go through to the village, or you would get dropped off close by, or and you would have to ask some folks, or maybe find some Mauritanians that were going to get to Murabit Hajj's village and just walk with them, or you would have to hire someone to go and take you and walk into the village, which would take several hours to get to.
Is Touemeret west or east in Mauritania?
So it's south. It's southeast.
Southeast into the Africa then, not by the Atlantic Ocean at all.
No, it's closer to Mali and Senegal.
Oh, okay. Subhanallah.
It is to the Atlantic Ocean.
So you are not close to the water at all.
No, you're totally in
the middle.
You're in the middle. You're not near the water.
Okay, so how long did it take for you to physically adjust?
Not that long. Like as far as like my your stomach and stuff like that.
The temperature, maybe there are bugs, maybe their water has microbes in it that made you sick, stuff like that.
So alhamdulillah, my stomach was fine. I went through that in Syria. In fact, I had more like health issues in Syria as far as like my stomach was concerned. Syria than in Mauritania, I didn't have any. The water, it was completely fresh. It was clean. There was nothing wrong with the water at all. It tasted like spring water. So it was very good. So that wasn't an issue. The bugs, it took a little while. You implement the sunnah of the fly.
Dip it in?
Dip it, yeah, just dunk it in. So that takes a little bit of time to get used to. But within a month or two. So you're just you're dunking them bad boys. So it's not as bad. But when the um, the rainy season came around, the mosquitoes would come in full force, and that you never can get you can get accustomed to. So
and you
you
just
would
get bitten all day.
so what you would do during the daytime, they're not out.
Mm.
It's when Maghrib hits, you'll hear like this buzzing, zoom, 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 and they all come, come from wherever they're at, and they start hunting. So you would have these mosquito nets, and you just kind of study under that, go to the masjid, come back, and just do that.
Okay, so now let's turn to the shuyukh that you met there. Tell us about them. Your first meeting with Murabit al-Hajj. Oh, Omar, let's get a picture of Murabit al-Hajj.
So let's contrast this with with Shaykh Hamza, alhamdulillah, you had an interaction somewhat. You can kind of talk to him a little bit. It was, and then when in Syria, there's a whole hierarchy of kind of you have to work your way up to studying with the shuyukh, and a lot of times like you're just going to the public lectures, and you don't have like a direct connection with your teachers, and it takes time for you to kind of get to the level where you're not just studying with the students, but you're actually studying with the teachers directly. And being that their political environment was such that like one of my teachers, he told me, he says, yeah, I can only have like 3 or 4 like private students like I have with you, and before the secret police come to me and start shaking me down, basically.
SubhanAllah.
So it's very difficult to have that direct contact with your teachers. Now in Mauritania, you're sitting there right in front of them. Like your lesson with them is your individual lesson. Like over there, you do not have classes in the sense that you have this classroom of students that are studying with the teacher. Rather, you go individually to the teacher with your lesson, and you read your lesson with the teacher. So when I got there, it was like in Syria, there's all this protocol, and it's a city where over there everything is open. Like we're living in tents, so everyone's lives, there's no personal space there.
SubhanAllah.
Like, you are in their home. So when you go to Mauritania, like you're studying in like their home. You're studying in the tent. You see their life. You see other families right there. Everything is all in the open. And yeah, so when I met Murabit al-Hajj, it wasn't in some masjid or had to wait for some ziyarah. It was his home right there. You can go see him right there. So now my meeting with him was it's really hard to kind of you have your vision of like what it's going to be like, and then when you're there, it's something different and more special. So
and was your Arabic good enough to talk?
So at the time, so I took a break from my studies, like a year. It was like when 9/11 happened. So I stayed in the States for a year, and so my Arabic kind of waned a bit. My speaking Arabic, my conversational Arabic. So when I got there, I had to learn a new dialect. So there's Fusha Arabic, and then there's these dialects, these regional dialects that you have to learn. So Mauritania, they have their own regional dialect called Hassaniya, and so Murabit al-Hajj speaks in Hassaniya. The other shuyukh, they can speak Fusha, but they're like native, like their mother tongue is Hassaniya. So it took a bit of time getting accustomed to it. So initially, I didn't really understand what he said. And he wasn't someone that he was older. He was in his 90s, maybe 100, when I first got there,
Mm-hmm.
and his spiritual state was such that he wasn't like conversating with you. He was in a constant state of dhikr.
Subhanallah.
That's all he did. Was his default state was dhikr.
Subhanallah.
You know, so if he wasn't teaching, then he would be doing dhikr. And so like I was saying, we have like the lessons, the way they're set up is that you go, so you have a circle, and whoever first come first serve, they come to the teacher, the sheikh, and then if you're first, then you go, and then the next. So so with Murabit al-Hajj, he would give the lesson like normal, like any other lecture, but you would see him like, it was amazing. Like one time I went to him and he was giving the lesson, and I got there a little late, so there was other students there, and so I took my lesson, and then I went to the side to kind of observe him. So I went to the side where he couldn't see me, and as soon as the students like left, he just went back to dhikr.
Subhanallah.
Quran, doing dhikr, and then this went on for several minutes, and then another student came in, and you can see that he had to kind of, like how when we go to the salat, you know, you go, okay, I gotta pray, I'm gonna make my intention, all right, you moving all of like the what your boss tells you have to do, this or that, all of your things that you have to do, you have to kind of force that out, and then you Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah.
With him, it's as if he had to do that same thing to kind of go out of dhikr so he can teach you.
Subhanallah.
Like he was constantly doing dhikr. I remember when I was sitting with him one day, and he was reciting Quran. I just wanted to sit because the students were allowed to go into into the tent and to sit with him, and so I went and sat in front of him, and he was reciting Quran, and he fell asleep. And he not only did he recite Quran when he went into sleep, but he was reciting the same exact surah from when he went to sleep. So he continued on in the prayer in his sleep, and I was there for, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes, and then he woke up from his sleep. He stopped for just a moment, and then he continued reciting from where he left off. So he was someone that was that his whole being was this formed in ibadah. So for him, that's his default kind of state. Like how the Prophet says that that no one truly believes until your hawa is in accordance to what I brought, like meaning his. So the hawa is something you don't have to think about. It's like eating, drinking, having relations with your spouse. You don't have to think about like having that desire. It naturally happens. So here the Prophet says that you haven't really believed, you haven't reached the perfection of iman until you have that. My sunnah is so ingrained, it's like your hawa.
Subhanallah.
And that's who he was. If I want to like sum up who Murabit al-Hajj is, he was that. He was someone that he forged himself into a state in which the sunnah was his default state.
You once said that time was experienced very differently there. That you stayed there for like a year felt like 8 years.
So when you're there, there's no there's no distractions, right? There's no at the time there's no telephones, there's no internet, there's really no sin happening there because you're in the middle of nowhere. You're in a place which the Quran is recited 24/7, like literally 24/7. So like at night, what they would do is they would create these bonfires to go, for the Quran students to go study, and they would take shifts. go and to the bonfire. So you'd have people that would be reviewing at night, the first third, second third, last third. So any time of the night throughout the day, you're hearing Quran 24/7.
Mm.
So you're in this environment. It's not something that you're not around much sin. It's almost impossible to sin.
SubhanAllah.
So you're there, and the way that the durus are set up is that they're very short. You have a lot of they're not like very long lectures. They're 15, 20 minutes, 30-minute lessons.
Mm.
One of the students from Europe came, and he was learning Arabic with one of our Shaykh, Shaykh Hadamin, rahimahullah, and he was giving him like one word a day, and he says, Shaykh, I can do more than that. And he said, okay, well, if I give you 1,000 words a day, or even 100 words, he said, can you memorize it today? He said, yeah. So will you remember it tomorrow? Will you remember it the next day? And he said, well, then what's the benefit of that? You've forgot it, as opposed to I give you this one word.
Yeah.
You recite it 1,000 times, and you never forget it for the rest of your life.
SubhanAllah.
So what have you learned?
Yeah.
And so their lessons are very short, and then you spend the rest of the day just memorizing it. And the days, like I said, are very long. And it's not just that, like, it's experientially, but it's the way in which you study makes like the barakah kind of infuse into the time. So I remember when I would study, and I would wake up for Fajr, and then I would study after that. Always felt like I was a little behind in the day. But if whenever I was given the tawfiq to wake up 2 o'clock in the morning with the rest of the students, I would memorize everything, understand everything in like a couple hours. That would take me the whole entire day to kind of really solidify the understanding, And my memorization of those lessons that were at night were much stronger. So you're living a life in which there's barakah in your time, and you're maximizing your time,
And
you're present. And you're present. Like, you feel present. You don't feel distracted. You don't feel like your mind is wandering. I don't know, living here, you feel like your mind is wandering. It's attached to like all these different tasks. Here you have this kind of way of being that's very natural.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when the foreigners were very uptight in their studies, and the Mauritanians were really relaxed and happy, and it didn't seem like they were trying hard. And I'm like, man, these Mauritanians, man, I don't got time for this. So they would come, want to kind of hang out and stuff. I'm like, I don't got time for this. I get all upset. But then I started observing them, and they made studying just a part of their life. And they would just, whenever they would go and they had like goats and stuff that they had, they would go and they would take their loh, their board, and they would review their lessons when they're taking the camels out, when they have to use the restroom and have to walk to go use the restroom. They would go and review their lesson. And when they were cooking, they would review their lesson. They would have one of the students there reading the commentary, and then they would like review teaching while they were cooking and just having a good time. And once I embraced that, the barakah in the time was amazing. Like you were saying, I was there that first year I was there. It felt like 8 years.
SubhanAllah.
It felt like I had enough time. Like, yeah, it was amazing.
SubhanAllah. And when you would take lessons, you would have to use the edges of the day, right? you would have to use the early morning and then the night, because in the middle of the day, wouldn't they all take a siesta and it'd be too hot to do anything, right?
Yeah, so they're in the morning they have like a very light breakfast. They'll have like maybe some bread, some peanuts, and that's about, and then have some tea, and that's pretty much it. And if the baker wasn't working that day, then you just had some peanuts and maybe little biscuits, and then that's it.
Wow.
Um, and then so lunch was like the main meal, right? So after dhuhr, you would eat lunch, and then so just before dhuhr until after lunch, so like maybe just before asr, there wouldn't be any studies like with the shuyukh. The shuyukh would be with their family and kind of taking care of business, and then they would also take, typically they all wake up for tahajjud, right? Everyone's waking up for tahajjud, so they would take a rest either just before dhuhr or after lunch. They would take a little break, but typically it would be just like a little nap before dhuhr.
Yeah.
And so our lessons will be during the morning, and then they would be from Asr time, and then at night would be revision for the Quran students. So they would go to the shiur, and they would the sheikh would ask them, okay, what Jews are you on? Like, how many did you like over there? They call it hizb. So which portion of the Quran have you memorized? Okay, you're there. So then they would just rattle off an ayat, and then they would have to continue on, and then the sheikh would go and then test them with another ayat, and then they would go like that. So every night there would be for that. But in the morning, with Shaykh Hadameen, you can take lessons in the morning, but typically that's the time in which they would teach their kids. So you can go study with them, but you'd also the kids would be there, so you would have to you'd be right there with the kids. So with Shaykh Hadameen, he would have he had a lot of kids, mashallah, and he was in his 70s, and he had like a 3-year-old son. He very virile man, and he had all of his kids were all lined up there, and in Mauritania they don't have they don't memorize Quran from a mushaf. Like one of the old men from the village, I remember in a gathering, he says like, I've never read the Quran from a mushaf in my entire life.
Subhanallah, Ajib.
And he mocked the students that were reading from the mushaf.
Subhanallah.
Not that it isn't praiseworthy to read from the mushaf, but it's an indication to the presence of the mushaf was an indication of like this foreign entity, like the Wahhabi and stuff like that coming in. It was a hallmark because they would read from the mushaf, and he said they would memorize from the law, so they learned it directly from their teachers, write it out from memory. So experiencing that was very amazing. So in the morning you would have all of the kids, and the way that they would teach is that the kids would they would do like they cover the letters similar like the Nuraniya, if you ever studied the Nuraniya, but they would write it out on the law, and the kids would go there and practice their section of like their version of the Nuraniya that was written down, and then eventually they get to where they're studying maybe just a few lines of Quran, and the sheikh will write it out for them, and then they would go memorize it, and then they would slowly learn how to write, and then the sheikh would dictate to them the section of Quran, and they would write it out, and then you would the student would present the board, the law, and then he would make all the corrections.
And I take it that Quran and fiqh and Arabic were the main subjects there.
Yeah, so that's for them. That's foundational. Everyone memorizes Quran. Everyone memorizes Quran, and in Mauritania, you have different. It's a tribal society, and the way that they have their their society set up is that they have certain tribes. They had a particular function in
I
society.
see. Okay.
So you would have the Zawaya tribes were all scholars. So they were shepherds and they were scholars. And then you have like the Mu'allimin, which were all of the tradesmen. And then you have the Arab tribes, which were like the warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Different, yeah, I have all these different groups.
Mm.
So with the Zawaya tribes, the scholarly tribes, like memorizing Quran was a given. And in fact, for them, one of the conditions for to get married, for a man to be suitable as a possible like son-in-law, is to have memorized and studied Khalil,
Subhanallah.
which is a text that's equivalent to like the Minhaj al-Talibin for the Shafis, Hidayah for the Hanafis. It's the foremost, like the top text, the one of the last bosses, I guess you would say, in the curriculum of fiqh. You would study, and they memorized it, and that was part of them being a man, is that you memorized Khalil. And then Quran was a given. Like I didn't memorize Quran before I was there. I had a little bit, but I wasn't Hafiz. And the little kids, I was studying whatever text at fiqh or maybe a grammar text, and the kids would come up to me, and being that I was studying, I wasn't studying the Quran, I was studying something else. That would, for them, it was indicated that I was a Hafiz.
Already finished. Subhanallah.
They'll go to me and like, okay, I need I need help with this ayat, because they didn't use the Muslim, right? So it wasn't on there on their loh. They made a mistake. They needed someone to help them correct. And I'm like, I'm not a Hafiz, and they look at me like, who are you? Do they think you? I never seen that before.
Subhanallah.
I'm not being a Hafiz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely like memorizing Quran. They're very they're probably of the foremost scholars in language, particularly poetry. They memorize so much poetry that it's easier for them to compose poetry than it is for them to compose prose.
And you spent time there? Did you come back and go, or is it all one stint?
So I went there for about almost 2 years, and then I came back. So I left the village once, and then after that, I went to I visited, and then I went back and studied in a different school, the Murabit Ahmad school, and then I was running into some health problems. I had like kidney stones, so I had to come back. And when I came, just before I left to Mauritania, Sheikh Rami brought over Sheikh Salek. So when I came back, I'm like, okay, well, I have Sheikh Salek here. At the time, I didn't speak to my family for like over a year, almost like 2 years. Because there was no telephone, no anything. They had no contact. Only contact they had from me was whenever friends from the Bay Area would come through. I would, send messages to them and, tell them that I'm fine. If you can just relay to them that I'm okay. And then they would send over like little treats and stuff from America. And that was it. Like I didn't speak to them for a very long time. So it was really tough on them. So I'm like, all right, maybe I should, this opportunity, Sheikh Salek's right here. I'm studying probably, 75, 80% of the, of what I would be typically doing over in Mauritania. So might as well just stay here. So I discontinued my studies with Sheikh Salek.
In the Bay Area, in that famous apartment.
Yeah, in the famous apartment. Yeah.
Right across
there
from
was two apartments. Yeah, the one over right across from Zaytuna.
Yeah.
And when I first got there, I was one of the brothers that was studying Mauritania. He set up a tent in the backyard, so I was living in the tent with him in the backyard of the apartment. Just kind of continuing on the desert living.
The Trinity. I mean, the
Yeah.
tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So the vision of Zaytuna at that time. Let's open up that website. Omar, you had dug up a website. The original Zaytuna website is here, folks. This is the original color scheme. I remember that very well. And a very basic website that Shaykh Murabit was able to dig up.
Yeah, I just went back to the Wayback Machine, and I found the original website.
Mm-hmm.
So here you have the original vision of Zaytuna and what was actually taught at the time. So during those few years in which Sheikh Hamza was teaching, and there was 200 plus students, there was no text. So what he would do is he would translate during the week the text, and there was a brother that helped him with the typesetting so you'd have like the Arabic on one side and the English on the other, or you'd have Arabic English like that old Ibn Ashur translation you probably remember. And so all those books were being translated during the week, and he would teach them. So everything was all based on the Mutun. So this is all prior to 9/11. So once 9/11 happened, then everything kind of went in the direction it went. But back then, it was all about teaching the Mutun. It was all about kind of connecting to that Mauritanian tradition of simple Islam, of having firm foundations in all the sciences. And so this website was around 97, 98.
Yeah. So the goal at Zaytuna was basically to produce ulama who trained in the mutun, right?
100%.
Which means
Go ahead.
So clearly now it's a university, right, or a college that's going to eventually be a university. So you were there when it transitioned. That's a part of history that was, our little world, that we care about these things, and that was a big shift. So was it gradual? Was it a bit of surprise? Did you see it coming, or how did that actually happen?
So the original Zaytuna, like I was saying, was built on the Mutun, and they were moving. This is the Zaytuna Institute era, and everything was building towards that. And when I came back in 2001, that summer, this is before 9/11, and during the summer, they had the Dean Intensive in Hayward, in the hood, on their 3-acre property.
Yeah, I was actually there, believe it or not, as a volunteer. Yeah, I was there as a volunteer. Yep. That's when Sheikh bin Baya came. Sheikh al-Yaqubi was there too. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I would take the train from Fremont all the way to Hayward. I walked one time because I missed the bus, and I walked from Fremont all the way to the school in Hayward. And so there was all these. Everyone was camping in these tents, and we had this all the classes. So everything was moving towards that. As soon as 9/11 happened, then classes were canceled, and Sheikh Hamza started giving lectures all over the country.
Yeah.
Basically, the way that the sentiment was that we weren't sure exactly what America was going to do with the Muslims. So there was a big push that we need to go and give da'wah. We need to tell people about Islam.
Yeah.
And that was like I guess triaging that folks at that time thought was necessary. It was very jarring. And so he was gone. He was no longer in the Bay Area.
Subhanallah.
In fact, the folks that were in other cities were probably seeing him more than us.
Mm.
So everything kind of changed. There was this in the fall of 2001. There were the set of classes that we were going to cover was like a class on history of Islam. It was all like history, just kind of the next steps of Zaytuna. Of okay, we want to really establish the foundations of what Islam is like pre colonization.
Mm-hmm.
So Muhammad Yaqubi gave a class on the history of Islam, and he would focus on areas of colonization and of the mindset.
Mm.
I remember one of the things which he said at that time was that you can see the beginnings of kind of the Muslim world looking towards Europe by the way in which cities were named and by how loanwords were brought into the language. So he said that typically you would have it where the loan word would be under an Arabic form of word of wazn, or like a sigha, like a Arabic pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was a loan word, maybe that word didn't exist in Arabic, but they would, at the very least, they would use the conventions of morphology, Arabic morphology. But then once you found that these loan words are coming in, and they were coming in without any change, you can see that the Muslims weren't on top anymore, and there was a decline. So I remember him talking about that. And then there was going to be this set of classes where Sheikh Hamza was going to focus on. There's a work in a Mauritanian poem that covers all of the battles and skirmishes of the Prophet and the Sahaba. And it was going to be that class, and then it was going to be Thomas Cleary he translated this the Art of War by Sun Tzu and a commentaries. So it was going to be this kind of study of history. So, but once the 9/11 happened, everything kind of shut down, and Sheikh started giving lectures, and really we didn't know what to do. And in fact, at that time, I even gave a class because there's no classes. Like, well, we need to have classes, because they're teaching. And I'm like, well, I just came back from Syria. Like, well, I could teach how to read and write. You got to get something on so that
Wasn't Sheikh Sadiq still there?
This is just before Sheikh Saleh came.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
So he. So there was no classes anymore, and so there was any classes, and he was just traveling constantly. And then from that point on, he was not giving classes really anymore. In the community, and so then after that, that's when Sheikh Saleh came, and I missed there was a little bit of friction that was there between Sheikh Saleh and the people at Zaytuna, but I wasn't there for that. I was in Mauritania at the time. So then when I came back from Mauritania, I thought the vision was still like it was. We're going to teach Mutun, everything. Okay, I did what you guys said. Go overseas, study Mauritania. That's the minhaj. We come back, and then, they've changed the vision, and they said we don't want to do community work anymore. And then there was a move towards opening up a college. So that's when they had a pilot program, which they brought in Imam Zaid, and they were still teaching Mutun at the time. Sheikh Imam Zaid was teaching Mutun, teaching Shafi fiqh, everything. Everything was still on the minhaj, more or less. But then there was this other voice of no, we need to integrate into society. We need to be more American. And as opposed to saying, no, let's be kind of a mirror towards America and be a place of change. Okay, this is how we should live. But no, there was inklings of we need to integrate more.
Yeah.
So once they decided to go and become a college, then that's where things changed. Because not just because they wanted to be a college, but they wanted to be accredited. So Imam Zaid wrote up a curriculum, an initial curriculum for Zaytuna College, and it was like a Syrian institute. You would study Khatri, you would study all the traditional texts, but like organized according to classes, like
Yeah.
university. But those classes didn't meet, or at least that structure didn't meet the the accreditation body's standards as far as like what the classes should look like. They need to be transferable to other universities. So then that's when they decided to go the full like liberal arts scene way of doing things, and they gutted all of the which from the undergraduate program, and this became a liberal arts college.
So then, all right, a person has an institute, changes the methodology, but there are people who invested years in the original method. But here's the thing, it's not just invested years, it required a sacrifice from a lot of people. A lot of people didn't go to the regular route of college and career, right? Possibly holding or believing that we're going to stick to this, and then we're going to have a role in this vision, in expanding it, right? But now that the vision's changed, how did those people adapt? Like, did they, what were the different reactions like?
I mean, it was tough. What my discussions with people in the organization, they said, well, you need to get a degree, and you need to go to teach here. You need a degree now. So, so what does that mean? You need to like stop everything you're doing, all of your seeking knowledge, and go and get a degree. And that's what many folks started doing. They said, okay, well, let me go to the university route and get a PhD and that. So really there's kind of a shift, at least in my generation, of folks going and trying to make it work through the PhD route.
Yeah.
But I left when I was a teenager, and I didn't have a degree. I went immediately after I became Muslim, and so for me that was like a non-starter of going to university and that. And I just feel like we're losing the. So then, I don't have like a stake in this vision anymore. It's changed. It's moved on. There's other people that are going to be involved. So I was involved, moving forward, but it wasn't, I could see my days were numbered there, and it was time to move on to other things. And not just me, but other folks did the same thing. Like at the time, Usama Canon had was working at Zaytuna with their outreach. So Zaytuna had an outreach program, and then they shut that down. So then he went and he started his Tatlif program, and then Sheikh Rami was getting inmates were sending in letters requesting information and stuff for Zaytuna Institute, so Sheikh Rami was started responding to those correspondence, those letters, and then he started his Taiba Foundation. So alhamdulillah, there were good things that came from that, but the shifting of the vision was very jarring for the community, definitely.
I'll tell you, the main part that was jarring is that Sheikh Hamza was a complete enemy of the university system. Like, he himself left it and boasted about leaving it. That's why a lot of people were like, hold on, wait, and now it's a university
Right.
or a college, because like the message had always been the opposite. Right. It's not that it was like a change, just a change. It was like the previous points were that this is useless. These colleges are useless. Even Islamic colleges, we were, taught that, these colleges are useless. I'm not talking about like Ma'had al-Fath or Ma'had Abi Noor or something, but I'm talking about like Islamic college of, these Arab countries, where you sat in a classroom, took exams, and we were taught like this stuff is useless. You should sit with shuyukh who are the living embodiment,
Right.
and read the matun and absorb the matun that they're teaching you, and go live your deen. And don't worry about having a degree that you could do something with in the world. And I'm starting to see now a lot of the wisdom when shuyukh say, you need to have yourself a career, and you need to have yourself you learn your deen separately. And maybe the two will meet someday. If you learn enough, you can be a full-time sheikh. But most often than not, it seems to me that the shuyukh have always kept, let's keep the deen pristine and pure and as it is, and then earn your wealth somehow else, some other way. But if you try to make the deen a path to the dunya, you're actually downgrading the deen. Meaning that we got to show to the people, what am I going to do with this? Right? Like, people always ask, all right, you studied this, what are you going to do with it? The answer really should be nothing of the dunya. For the dunya, I'm going to learn IT, I'm going to learn some other field. This is just for the deen. Right? It's just for me, my akhirah, my community, my family, etc. Then there's no pressure to find a justification of how this benefits your career. Right? And maybe, and you get the feeling around the university folks that, well, definitely around regular secular PhD programs, it's definitely a career-driven operation. Like there's nothing else. There's no other reason you would take a PhD except to become a professor and have a career, write books, etc. They're not interested in Islah. I'm saying about secular universities. So I think that's an important way forward when we're trying to do this, the type of dawah that we're doing. The way we, like to do it is that keep it as it is, and don't mess around with it. It's been around for a long time, and it's been good. And every time someone fiddles with it, it may look good in the beginning, but a lot of the taste is lost. And that's really what I think a lot of us are lamenting, is that there was a taste, there was a flavor to it. No interest at all except improving myself. And I think that's really where the deen is at its best. No interest at all except draw near to Allah, be at my best. There are very few areas where it overlaps. The book publishing world, of course, they make profits out of that. But overall, a lot of people love that simple vision of things that doesn't require us to justify how this is good for our dunya.
Yeah, and I think also this having a real deep analysis of like what did our tradition look like historically? How did was it something like you were saying where you would just go study the deen and then that's it, or was there like a trade school that they would go through? Like what exactly did it actually look like?
Yeah,
and can it be something that you can integrate? Like, is it so with like a college, you're kind of putting life on pause.
Yeah,
and you're just going to go do that, and then after you finish that school, your school must be something that you can transfer, go into like a graduate program, go to medical school, go get a job, right? So that's our path. Now, how did that look in the Muslim world? Well, in the Muslim world, you had these halaqat where you would go and study. And it was something in which the path of becoming a scholar was open, right? So you would get trained in a Maktab program. You would go and memorize Quran, learn foundations of Islam. So that would be like at the level of like Risala or the Reliance of the Traveler. Something everyone knew that was like the foundation. Everyone knew that. And then as you went through those programs, you would also learn a trade. You would go and you would learn bookkeeping. You'd be a leather, worker. You would have an actual job. Yeah. And even see Ahmad Zarruq said in one of his books, he said that if going and getting money from like a waqf of like this endowment and just working just through that, he says it's like the most. It's like as if you're doing, it's the closest thing to haram that's halal.
SubhanAllah.
Like, it's allowable, but it's not it's not the best way to do things. And in Mauritania, they would have like an actual job. Like the shuyukh weren't just sitting there; they had livestock. They were shepherds, would sell their livestock to people, and they would go and they would there was a drought one time, and they had to take their livestock all the way to Mali. They had to take all and then in Syria they would have these halaqats that you would go and study like major works in the morning. They would have throughout the day. They would have these set of halaqats right after Fajr, right after Asr, right after Maghrib. And if you just went to those halaqat, you become a sheikh. Like Sheikh Samar Nas, you had him on a while back. He's a physician, and he did not study in any institute.
Subhanallah.
All of his studies were through these halaqats.
Subhanallah.
And he's one of the, the foremost scholars of Hanafi fiqh and all the sciences. He knows. I've had a conversation with him about Maliki fiqh, and he knows as much as I've been studying my whole life Maliki fiqh, and he knows Khalil inside and out. And he didn't study in any of these university programs or institutes. He studied in these traditional halaqats.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the true kind of dynamism of Islam, is having these halaqats. Like we initially, like you're saying, that during those wonderful years of Zaytuna, the early pre-Zaytuna era, where we study mutun, then we've kind of transitioned into like this kind of we've packaged teaching the deen as like a commodity. Like it's a product that can be bought and sold. So you have all this advertising around it, you have this kind of this packaging, and then you kind of sell a particular course.
Yep.
And which the whole purpose of it is just to kind of catch the eye. And you would see like some of these institutes, it looks like you're like on a Netflix, you're going scanning through Netflix. Oh, I want to go to this class right here. It's like you're watching an episode of whatever. Whereas, so if one were to go through that type of studies, you could spend your whole life going through those classes and you'll never become a teacher. You'll never become anything. Whereas the way that the traditional halaqah system is that you begin your seeking of knowledge, studying traditional texts, and then you get to a level in which you know your fundamentals that everyone should know, your fard ayn, and then if you want to just get a job, you can go do that. But you have the fundamentals where you can still go to the halaqat and still become like a sheikh. Like one of Sheikh Muhammad Awama, he's one of the foremost hadith scholars from Syria. He's currently living in Turkey. There was an interview of him. He said that his father was like he didn't receive formal studies. Like he said, he was as if he was like illiterate in the sense that he didn't go through like formal studies, but he would attend his teacher's halaqat. He's been doing his whole life, and he said that for me to know what my father knows in tafsir just by going to these halaqats, I would have to stop my studies and devote the next 8 years to 10 years to just tafsir. Right. So the way that our system is set up is that it should allow someone to grow in their studies, and if Allah gives them tawfiq, they can go and become shuyukh. Right. That becoming a sheikh isn't like a graduation. You go to institute and I graduated and now I have this stamp. I'm mufti sab now. That's not how it is. There's tawfiq, there's barakah, there's all of these unseen realities that happen that make someone an Imam Nawawi.
And there's no timeline. Like there's no by 25 you got to do it. Some people started at 40. I mean, there's shuyukh in Cairo that their books are used in Azhar. I can't remember his name, but he started very late. Right? He started extremely late. And he was a janitor in the school, in Al-Azhar. He used to be somebody who turned on the lamps. This is a famous story. He used to turn on the oil lamps. And he decided, upon one time a young man sort of looked down on him because he spilled the oil on him, or wax or whatever. And he felt bad. So he contemplated for a while. Then he enrolled. And because of his years of service, they just let him study for free and kept him on the salary. Well, he studied 10 years. And then by that time, he was in his 60s. So he hadn't even started. At 40, he had not even started. SubhanAllah. And his book is used in Azhar. If you ask around, people can find you. He has a grammar book that's used as a textbook in Azhar. Or at least was.
Yeah, all of his books, this is Shaykh Khalid al-Azhari. All of his grammar books are
So you're
are
familiar
studied
with
to
the
this
story?
day. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
good.
yeah, like you said, a very famous story. So he has a
Yeah.
commentary on Ejramiya. He has a commentary on some books of poetry. He has a commentary on Ibn Hisham's Awdah Masalik, and an advanced text in grammar. It's like one of the final texts he would study. He has a commentary on that, and yeah. So there's numerous scholars like this, and if you read the Ta'lim al-Ta'allam, the instructions for the student. He has a whole section where he goes over scholars that started in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. There's one, I think he was like in his 60s, or how old was he? He was like 50 or 60, and he studied for like 20 years or 30 years. And then he went and he gave ifta for another 30 years. So it was, and he lived until he was teaching and into his hundreds. Right. So
I always teach the students who are, I see they have like some himma to them, that the run of the mill and the no theater, no flashiness classes, that is the way of Allah and His Messenger. That's the spiritual way. That is what Allah loves, and that's the way of prophets, and that's the way of the greats and the awliya. There is a theater version of Islam that has to do with followers, influence, stages, blah, blah, blah. That may have its role in dawah, maybe. That may be a big net and a big door for dawah, but it's not the way. The way are these humble classes from the beginning of the book, and you go to the end of the book. It may take 5 years, 10 years, 20, whatever it is. So you marinate with the sheikh in these studies, in these classes. Likewise, the spiritual life. There are big gatherings where everyone's there and dressed up, but then there are very simple times where you just go for Maghrib on a regular day. There's 10 people there. You recite the word on the way there. You do some tasbih on the way back. And that 30 minutes is probably better for you than a lot of these flashy gatherings. So there's a big difference between the big lights that are a door to dawah and the actual marination. I'm of the personal belief that Islam is going to spread through very little individual efforts and family efforts. Families grow, individuals are good examples, they make friends, people enter Islam by interacting with those people. That's what I really believe that how Islam is going to spread. I don't have a lot of faith in trying to not appease, but even appeal to the higher echelons of society. I'm not saying it's wrong, whether it's academia, media, politics. It could be beneficial, but I don't see that that's going to be the way. The way that Islam has always spread is through the people. And the people, the more marinated they are in knowledge and spirituality, the better, right? The better they are, the better examples they are, the better families they have. So it's two different visions of how to go. And I can't say that one is 100% right or wrong, but this is what I believe in personally, is it's very slow, no flashiness, grassroots effort. Mm. And I could say that, and it's not a great example, but when I was young, there was an area called Lakewood, New Jersey, and some Hasidic Jews settled there. Mm. These people, they stay to themselves, different from us. We do dawah, we interact, we mingle, right? They just stay to themselves. And you'd pass by, and it was like maybe for 30 seconds, you passed by their neighborhood on Route 9 in South Jersey. And you say, oh, the Jewish area, some Hasidic Jews. Eventually, it would take you 5 minutes to pass by the Hasidic area because they keep just growing, expanding. And fast forward almost 35 years now, 30 years, it's one of the nicest areas. It was at one point like a ghetto, Hasidic ghetto. Now it's nice, right? It's a nice area. They've got, the new generation has come up. They got stores. It's a nice area. And it's the whole town. The whole city of Lakewood is theirs. They literally are the whole city. And these are people that don't do dawah. Imagine now if you had that kind of focus with yourself, but you do dawah and you do mingle. And you don't have to be so different from everybody else. Distinct, but not different, right? There's a big difference. I should say distinct, but not foreign. There's a big difference between distinct and foreign. And I think that's the way our da'wah is going to have a lot more success. And the root of it are these kinds of halaqat at the local level. And if it's kept at the local level, then there's no hasad to each other, right? No one's halaqah is going to become so humongous that everyone else is blocked out. No, because you're working locally. If you're working locally, you can't be here and across town at the same time. Someone else is going to go across town and have their influence, right? And there's also an intimacy when things are localized. Because again, same concept. You can't be in 3 different places at once. So you're going to be here. That leaves a space for another group to start up their thing. And there's no hasad with each other. And there's a small intimate circle, right? That's what I think is the future. And I think these classes, when it's consistent over years, it transforms your life. And you eventually can become somebody who transforms other people's lives. And that's hopefully where we're headed, inshallah. Last thing I want to ask you about your biographically. How did you end up coming to the East Coast from beautiful California, Bay Area, such a pretty area, pretty part of the country? How did you end up here? I mean, we're happy you're here. For those who don't know, Shaykh Murabit is the Dar al-Fath teacher for Maliki Fiqh and Aqidah. Aqidah mainly. And then when Shaykh Harun travels, then also Maliki Fiqh too. And we'll be teaching people online in his own little zawiyah. Well, hopefully it's not little. It'll expand, inshallah. But we've designed it as like a virtual zawiyah. And instead of offering like an online college where there's a schedule of classes and the teacher's plugged into the class, no, we've actually flipped it. The teacher is the main focus, and he teaches when and what he wants. And then you go and you study with the teacher. And you plug in wherever the teacher comes in. That's the new vision of ArcView that, inshallah, within a few days or weeks, even weeks or days, I should say, we're going to be launching that website. So the goal is to connect you with the teacher, not to a curriculum, not to a college course. Don't ask what I'm going to get out of it. Right? There's no interest here except for fostering this relationship between the student and the sheikh. Shaykh Murabit was a student for a long time. Now he's going to be giving you what he learned. So tell us what brought you over here to the East Coast.
Nothing that was, I guess, there wasn't any dream or anything like that. There was an al-Wali that came to me. You must. It really was more a practical reason. My wife going to, she was a PhD student in psychology, and she had she matched for her final year internship in New York, and it wasn't really the main kind of reasoning before coming to New York is that, okay, let's try to find the areas which are Muslims. So I said, okay, you can apply to these places where the Muslims are. That's what inshallah will go. So a spot opened up in New York, so she applied and she matched here, and it's just, we've been here ever since. We enjoy the city, and New York, we have a love-hate relationship with. It's very tiresome sometimes, but it's also a wonderful place to be. There's a lot of interesting people here, and I've been giving classes and what have you here in the city. So I feel, it's alhamdulillah, and we've connected, and it's been wonderful teaching at Dar al-Fath this past year.
Alhamdulillah.
And, looking forward to what we have in store. It's alhamdulillah. So it was mainly just my wife got she was matched out here. Okay, and mashallah. Then it's interesting in life how you have certain doors will open up, and then others, and you just know that Allah wants you to be here. So for some reason, Allah wants me to be here on the East Coast and spend time with you guys.
Yeah, it's alhamdulillah, a blessing for us. We're happy that it happened, and hopefully Dar al-Fat will continue to grow, and we want to grow as a humble organization that should grow slowly, and we're not racing against anybody or anything, and we just want to do things right and take our time with it. We may actually be coming upon a location for our classes in the future. That right now we're happy to use the masjid, but eventually when you have year 2, year 3, year 4, you're not going to have enough room in the masjid, and we're slowly getting to that. But that's where we want to go with Dar al-Fath. And right now the classes are through NBIC. My classes are always going to be inside of NBIC, but eventually as the years compile and the classes compound up, we're going to need it's going to need its own spot. And you just put your nose to the grindstone and have your focus, and Allah will give us something, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, mashallah, we kept you for a long time on this, because I love hearing about Mauritania and letting my mind drift off to Mauritania and those times, and especially those nice times in California. I've been there, I went 3 times to visit Zaytuna and to be there. So it was some really good times. And qadar Allah ma sha'a fa'al. Allah has a plan for everything. And you think that something's going to take off somewhere, it takes off in other areas. Like you said, Usama Canon had something going, rahimahullah. Shaykh Rami had something going. Shaykh Herodes was there. He was a Maliki, studied Mauritania, but then he went to Tarim, studied Shafi'i fiqh, and now he's running his own institute, which is also very peaceful out in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And alhamdulillah, we're trying to get something going here in New Brunswick. And may Allah give us tawfiq. I mean, so thank you very much for your time. Jazakallah khairan. And we'll see you soon, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And also, we will bring Shaykh Murabit back when ArcView launches to tell us about what he'll be teaching, how he'll be teaching, and how you can sign up for it. Inshallah ta'ala. He'll be your teacher in fiqh and aqidah. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. All right, there you have it, folks. That was our story about Mauritania and Shinqit, and it's called Bilad al-Shinqit. Bilad, the land of Shinqit, was a Roman. I think it's a Roman term. We don't have time for too many questions now. That website's going to be completely revamped. It's being revamped right now, Omar. Just for you. Huh?
Didn't we just revamp it like 2 months ago?
Yeah, no, we revamped it last year, and now we're revamping it again.
I swear we did it after.
Well, the first revamp, it was just the presentation. This revampment is also it's a different platform, and it's a different. It's a whole different philosophy too. Okay, let's go to. Bismillah, Bismillah. Let's see if we have any Q&A here. We'll take maybe just 1 or 2 questions and answers. Ruling on whitening the teeth. Yeah, you can whiten teeth. Nothing wrong with that. You mean like just putting those sticky things and removing them after 20 minutes or something? What about removing fat, skin? After a person lost a lot of weight and they have a lot of skin, I ask my fiqh teacher on that, Sheikh Mahmoud Shabib, he said it is permitted on qiyas of removing the extra finger. So if you have something that is extra on your body, you're allowed to remove it. So some people they have so much weight, they lose so much weight, and now they have extra skin. They are allowed, according to Maliki fiqh, this fatwa from Sheikh Mahmoud Shabib, to remove it. Right? You've seen those advertisements, right? You've seen those billboards. You are allowed to remove it. Yeah, they're all over Turnpike. I'm not going to make fun of somebody who changed their life around, was really out of shape, had courage, guts, fortitude to fix themselves. It's a big impact on somebody to be really out of shape. Like, you're probably husband or wife is not happy, or you're not happy, and then they go through this transformation over 2 years to fix themselves. We do get impacted by how we are physically. And now, okay, so the fat's gone, but the skin that you stretched out is not gone. And they go do these procedures to trim off that skin. I don't know much about it besides that. All right, some other brothers want to take this question. What is kalam? Let me tell you, just forget the word kalam. It's a distraction. You need, when you debate somebody, atheist, Christian, anybody, you're going to debate them with a few logical principles. Number one, all the terms that you use have to be defined. This is really just speech 101 too. Number two, the necessary implications of these speech, of these words have to be listed. Number three, you cannot contradict yourself within the statement or question that you bring forth. Right? That these essential rules of debate. Right? When you talking to somebody, that's the essential rules of not only debate, analyzing any speech, anything somebody gives me. That's how you analyze it. Let me see this word. What does it mean exactly? What did you mean by it when you said it? Right? And if it has multiple meanings, it has multiple meanings. That's where we have opinions. Another question somebody asked is a famous question, popular question. Why do we have one Islam, multiple madhahibs, and multiple sects? Well, the answer to that is that, again, if the speech allows for multiple meanings, if a word allows for multiple meanings, that's where you can have madhabs. If a question is new and there's no answer for it in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon, allows for that. There's going to be new answers, right? Or different answers, I should say. The difference between a madhab and a sect. The madhabs differ on interpretation of indefinite terms. A term that may have multiple meanings. But a sect deviates from definitive terms. A word that has only one possible meaning, you deviated from that. That's what we call a sect. That's the difference. The very simple answer on the difference between madhabs and sects and what is kalam and why do we need it.
There's an Instagram question.
Instagram question says, I've recently been informed the aqeedah of the four imams were authority. Forgive me if I'm how do we reconcile that most of the followed madhab to be Ash'ari Maturidi? The answer is simple, is that as Allah tells us in the Quran, as shaitan inspires his followers to argue with you, right? Insofar as there is no argument, I don't need dialectical theology. Dialectical theology is, it's almost like, imagine Iblis comes and he's trying to checkmate you, right? He's trying to attack you with this question, attack you with this question, attack you with that question. Shaitan did not stop trying to inspire his followers to argue with Muslims after the time of the three generations or the four imams even. These things continued and continued and continued, and until today it's continuing. But it reached its height at certain points. And the scholars needed to come up with answers. All right? And that's essentially what kalam is about, or the Ash'ari and Maturidi aqidas are about. They are bringing answers to these riddles that shaitan brings you. Being able to reconcile between seemingly apparent contradictory verses. Being able to show that Islam has no contradictions in it. So that is the purpose of these madhabs of aqid. Now, the four imams, three of them, their followers immediately within the next few generations, they adopted these ideas. They adopted this kalam. And that's the reason why you can have trust in that. Because all the Shafi'i scholars who became Ash'ari, are they going to all have been misguided? Right? All the Hanafis who became Maturidi, all the Malikis who became Ash'ari, probably you can list from these three madhabs, you can list the ones that didn't recognize the acceptability of that and the necessity of that. I mean, how could you have a world with atheists and Christians coming at you and atheists coming at you and say, no, we're not going to answer any of these things, right? Shaitan is still working. Yes, the Salaf, there are guides, and we never contradict them. That's the key. You do not contradict the Salaf, but you have to answer questions that they never faced, that you will have to face that. Happens in fiqh all the time too. A society that operates on cars, right? How many Jummahs do we have in the mosque? Salaf never did this. But they never lived in a society where cars took up so much space and masajid were smaller, right? So you have multiple Jummahs in one masjid. Something the Salaf never did. Would be considered an invalid Jummah. All right, what else do we have? Ruling on attending a mixed wedding as a couple. You should tajannub or stay away from any situation where there could be excessive gazing upon the other genders. So you could take your family and go sit in this section where you won't have to gaze upon what's sinful, and strange men won't be gazing at your wife either. And once the music gets crazy, that's usually when the people say, I'm going to go pray, find a room and pray Maghrib, right, and stay in the hall and leave after that. So you neither upset the people that invited you. People are mixed bags, right? They may love you so much, and maybe your family, and yet they may do something on their wedding that's munkar. And that's why I promote people outside the context of a specific person to talk about this. Because if it's in the context of a specific person, you may, hurt them, offend them, whatever. But outside that context, we could talk all we want. We need to make sure our weddings are toned down a bit from this munkarat, right? Munkar, things that are questionable, if not known to be sinful in our Sharia, if not debatable, right? So we got to tone down these weddings. We also got to tone down the spending on the weddings and the extravagance of the weddings and all the hoopla that's going on in these weddings, and simplify things a little. You can have a nice, classy wedding without a lot of this stuff. If you look at in the past, in our history, a wedding was not considered what it is today. That khalas, life has to stop. People travel from Toronto, travel over to India. What is all this, right? We don't have this. It's got to be simplified. Arc view, what is it going to look like? My classes will be under essentials. Shaykh Mahdi is teaching you Arabic. Shaykh Murabit is teaching you Aqidah. Shaykh Murabit is teaching you Maliki fiqh. Shaykh Imran Ahmed is teaching you Hanafi fiqh. Shaykh Mahdi Lak is teaching you Shafi'i fiqh. Shaykh Nuhsan is teaching you Hanbali fiqh. Those are the tracks that we're going to have. 7 in total. Essentials, me and my team of Shabab that will teach the introductory subjects. Introductory of the 4 madhabs, introductory of Aqidah, and I teach classes 2 on Tasawwuf. And when you're done with the fiqh or Aqidah, then you could go to the other classes. And if you want to simultaneously take Arabic, you could do that. Okay. All right, we got to stop here. And we want to pause. And here's another question. Building over the Kaaba. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty well known that the Ottomans, they never built over the Kaaba. They never built a building taller than the Kaaba. No, where that is written in some history book, we can ask about it, but it's pretty well known that the Ottomans, they had a sort of unwritten rule out of adab. Now, what are these rules? Adab is basically what you make it to be, how your society perceives it. That's a urf, a custom, what all the good people deem to be manners, right? One of those is pointing your feet towards the Qibla. Al-Shafi'i was one time, someone was pointing his feet towards Imam Ahmad's house in Iraq. And Shafi'i at that time was in the city. And he actually said, he discouraged the person from pointing his feet towards Imam Ahmad's house. Not the person, Imam Ahmad, the house. And that's a story that you can find readily available in different books. So adab is what people make it to be. And there you can go to, I have relatives in the countryside of Egypt. And I was really uncomfortable. I was sitting with my uncle one time, and they're in Cairo now, but they're originally from the countryside. His son comes and puts his feet up on a table, face right in front of his dad. And he saw that I was like a little awkward by that. And he said, "Oh, we don't have those hang-ups, right? Like we don't do that here. Like we're okay with that." So there are different adab for different times and places, and based on what those people hold to be good manners or bad manners, right? So putting books on the floor is very common in the desert because they don't have tables, right? But if you go to other places, more cosmopolitan places, they don't put the religious books on the floor. They don't put it lower than the waist because they have shelves everywhere, right? They don't put it lower. A mushaf for sure definitely would never be lower than the waist. Even the order of how they put the books, they're going to put like, they won't put nahu over sirah. Grammar is not going to go over sirah. So you can order that. It's an adab. Neither is it a sharia, a law, but also Allah did say, give the general verse, وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Whoever honors the symbols of religion, this is from the piety of their hearts. And it's crazy that you see some people, they make fun of this all the time, right? But don't expose your ignorance, right? Nobody said it's a religious rule, but the general rule of having to have adab, that's there. And now you're not able to understand other people's adab, level of adab. That's your problem. Now, where do we draw the line, though? We draw the line also from our elders and from the shuyukh. Malik did have lists of what's ghulu. Imam Malik used to find things to be ghulu, constantly kissing hands of everybody. Imam Malik found that to be ghulu, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's what I recall. I think in one of the commentaries of, or one of the books of Ibn Abi Zayd, right? If I'm not mistaken, he considered that, if that becomes a custom, that he considered that to be an excess. He considered some simple things as hugging someone who didn't come back from travel, someone you see every day. Like a man to hug a man that he sees every day. Sounds unnecessary, right? He said shaking hands is enough. And when you do hug someone, that you clasp his hands and put both of your hands between the chest, so there's no chest to chest touching, right? Your hands will be in the middle. These are adab that he found to be good, right? Now, are these like laws? Are you committing some sins if you do that? No, it's his assessment based upon the people of Medina. Like, this is what the grandkids of the Sahaba are doing, right? And it's worth noting that because these are the scholars and grandkids of the Sahaba. So that's the nature of adab and custom. And that was a custom of the Ottomans at that time, that you don't build a building taller than the Kaaba, right? I'm going to ask actually our Ottoman historian friend who is in Turkey if he had any document on that. I mean, we don't even need that, but it's very interesting. Okay. All right. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.